Welcome to Andrea Loves Everybody. I'm your host, Andrea Gazzetta, and every week we interview someone about love and their life. And this week we have Chris Adams.
Hey.
Welcome, Chris.
Hi, nice to be here at this wonderful. I love this place because I got to eat at a Mexican restaurant down the street. I asked for beer. It wasn't on the menu, but he gave it to me because Mexicans are amazing.
Hell yeah.
They're the best people in the world. And I found out I'm a part of them. Anyway, also, I got to go get a coffee at one of the K-Town spots up this way, and I realized
you can put boba in anything?
You can put boba in just about anything.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I like to start this podcast by telling the guests something that I love about them.
Oh, nice.
I'm a huge fan of your stand-up. I remember the first time I saw you do stand-up, and you were talking about your mom and like your childhood. And honestly, just for me, anytime someone can make a dark childhood really, really funny on stage, that's something that I'm into. Like when you can access darkness and turn it into something just hilarious, I love that. And I think you do it so well.
Oh, thank you.
So I love watching you do stand-up.
Well, that means a lot. Yeah, I mean, I had no choice in the childhood. I didn't pick it. I didn't go, hey, everyone, I'm going to be a comic. Make sure you make that childhood as terrible as possible.
Take what you can get, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I've always, well, not always. Funny, I started out as a one-liner comedian.
Really?
Yeah. Before I knew what I was doing. My favorite comic at the time was Mitch Hedberg, so I went.
Oh, I love him.
I sounded just like him at the beginning. It wasn't good. My jokes are whatever. But but over time, I was like, well, let me just talk about what has really happened in my life. And then after a while, because of where I came up in comedy, which was Long Beach, I was around like a bunch of artists and musicians and stuff. So they were just like, oh yeah, every time I talked about personal stuff, they would be more interested in it. So
it's more interesting. You have an interesting life.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to ask you about this a little bit. So you grew up not really knowing who your father was.
Exactly.
And you recently got a DNA test.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk about that story a little bit?
Well, okay. So I don't know where to exactly start, but I never met my father. My mother said she would tell me when I got older, and then she passed away when I was 9.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, that's okay. It's part of it, part of life. But because she was a heroin addict, so they don't usually live very long. But so she ended up dying pretty early, and I never got to find out. So years later, my aunt, one of my mother's sisters, bought me a DNA test, and from that, I was able to find a little bit more about my past, because I knew like what my mom was, but I never met my dad, and I was the only brown person in my family. So I knew that I was different, but it said like Native American but at 50%. So whatever my father is, it's somehow related to that. And more recently, actually, one of the people that was a close relative contacted me and told me a little bit about his side of the family.
Is your father still alive?
I don't know. We don't know.
Interesting.
I do not know who he is yet. I just know that there's a family member that I found, and I gave him my number, and he called me, and he's like, "Oh wow, this is so crazy." He's like, we're from Mexico, from this area. I'm like, "Oh, crazy! That's insane." So, I'm half Mexican from, some, I don't know where yet, but I'm about to find out, hopefully get to meet these people. Hopefully maybe they'll know who my father is, or I might get lucky and then because I sent them a picture of my mother, maybe it'll spark a memory. I don't know. I don't even know if it was a one night stand, and that's how I came about. I have no idea. I imagine it's probably a one night stand if my mom just wouldn't tell me.
Yeah.
But I was also like 6. So you're not going to be like, hey, I slept with someone once. That's how you were born. That's not something you tell your child usually.
Hopefully not.
Well, my mom, I mean, despite her being having her issues. She was actually a really good person. She was very religious
Mhm.
and very loving, and taught me to love everybody, even no matter where they come from. But
Yeah.
obviously don't get walked on. But try and love everybody and treat them with respect. So yeah, she had her morals, um, even though she was imperfect, like most people.
I feel like heroin is an interesting drug because it seems to be the drug of people that are hurting.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a drug. It's not necessarily a drug that's like these people are destructive or they're bad. It's like they're people that have experienced loss or bad things in their life, and it's a way
Hmm.
to kind of like numb their sadness. Um,
Well, I think that's what most people do when they self-medicate,
yeah, for sure.
because there's something about, well, that drug specifically,
Hmm.
but even other drugs, in and I kind of know this too, but people use it in order not to feel,
Right.
so that they can get through hard times.
But
Um,
the problem is they don't deal with the hard thing. They don't deal with the real emotions and work through them. The drug kind of can sometimes create like almost a dream state where you skip over those emotions, but then
Absolutely.
you don't fix where the sadness comes from. And so it persists and it
Hmm.
becomes more problematic and you become dependent on the drug to feel good instead of like solving how to feel good yourself.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when someone finally does go to treatment, they try and fix the emotional part more
Hmm.
than the drug part. Or well, they do both, but they also try and a good uh, rehab program will try and fix the emotional side of what's bothering someone, because a lot of times it's the emotional reasons that people even use drugs in the first place, to try and
Right.
get through X, Y, or Z in life.
Yeah.
And I know my mom started doing drugs early because I've been trying to figure out her story too. And according to my aunt, she started when she was like 12.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's too early.
Yeah, I would agree. That's way too early. So she'd been kind of hooked on drugs in a way.
Do you
Uh,
think that your mom had like a bad childhood or bad things happen to her when she was younger that made her drawn to that?
yes. Well, my grandpa is verbally abusive for sure. But I don't think well, it's hard to figure out what the truth is, because everyone in my family won't open up 100%. But I've been trying to get interviews with people and figure out what had happened, because I'm like, why would she turn to heroin? Well, the other sister did not. She turned to like exercise. So who knows? She was more of an
Interesting.
athlete, and my mom was more of a druggie. But they both turned to something, and I know that my grandpa was very abusive, at least verbally, because I've spent time with him. He was pretty, and then later on he got Tourette's,
Oh, wow.
which nobody even noticed because he was always a dick. It was like, yeah. But I do remember that when I stayed, because I stayed with him for about a month or two, when my mom went to jail one of the many times.
Okay.
And yeah, he was just a grump, a very angry man, always a alcoholic. So obviously she learned that from him, but I'm wondering if something happened. No one will tell me. No one will tell my brother. No one will tell me. So I don't
How
know.
old is your brother? Is he older or younger?
Older. He's 36, 30, almost 37, maybe this year. I don't know. I'm very bad. I'm a bad brother. But yeah, so we've been trying to figure out what had happened, and I'd like to know too. I mean, my grandma gets really sad if I talk about it, because she feels guilty, I think, to this day. Like, she'll start crying. I'm on the phone with her and she'll just start bawling, and I feel bad because I'm like, hey, look, I have no hard feelings for what has happened. I think
You
I
just want to know the story so you can understand where your mom came from and kind of how you came into the world.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know my mom was crazy. Like, she had her crazy moments.
Like,
Um,
do you mean crazy as in like out of control or crazy as in certifiable?
no, not certified, just out of control.
The problem with heroin too, though, is like that messes with when you're going up, you can be
Mhm.
very docile and sweet and kind. And then when you start going down, like people can like react really horribly and just like,
Oh yeah,
and that's part of the drug. It's difficult when someone's an addict to suss out what their true self is and what
mhm.
the drug is making them be.
Correct. And I mean, I just meant she was out of control because I remember my stepdad, who is my brother and sister's father. So we have
Okay.
separate fathers.
Okay.
Same mom, different father. He was married to her, and I believe he still loves her. I think, even though she's dead, he never remarried. I mean,
Oh,
he
wow.
dated, but he never really, nothing ever. He never no long term
Wait, so your
relationships.
brother's older than you, but he's their
No. My stepfather. It's their stepdad
uh-huh.
is their father, but not mine.
Right, but they're older?
They are older. So she was married to him first.
Okay.
They got a divorce. She had 2 kids with him.
Okay.
They got a divorce. Then some time later, I came along.
Okay.
So
But you never lived with him.
no, not
Okay, that
well,
makes sense.
not until I was 14.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
Okay. So let me just start from the beginning. I think this will make it easier. So when I was born, like in my act, I talk about it, it's true. I was born a heroin baby, so I was like 1 pound 7 ounces. I really was that small. I nearly died at birth, and then after I came out, my mom lost me because she was on heroin, obviously.
Yeah.
So they took me away from her. But this is like when I was really little, like around 1, and I went to live with a family, but I don't know who they are. And my first memory of that I can remember at all is being with them, not my mother, but with them, like this weird family that I don't know who they are, but I was in their living room playing with trucks or whatever, and watching Rambo. I remember those weird those weird
Yeah.
things, and but anyway, so I've been taken away from my mother multiple times throughout the first 9 years of my life, and we also moved around a lot because she was on heroin, so she didn't pay rent a lot.
Yeah. So did your brother and sister live mostly with your stepdad?
Exclusively. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Whereas
that makes sense.
we didn't have the same childhood.
Yeah, that's a whole other life.
Exactly. And so I moved around a lot, and then I would visit my brother and sister and my stepdad, and I'd get to stay with them for the weekend or something, just so that we all got to bond and know each other. And then sometimes they would come and stay with my mom, but she tried to steal them a couple times, away from
Yep.
my stepdad. And
He probably wasn't stoked about that.
he was not stoked about that. And luckily the courts would never let that happen because of, I don't know how I stayed for so long.
Well, I mean, that's what is really baffling me is like the courts decided that she couldn't raise your brother and sister, but then they're like, well,
She kept winning me back somehow. I have no idea, but I
was it with a boombox outside your window? Or?
Well, maybe. No, I don't know. I don't know what she did, but I do remember the Child Protective Services being around a lot, but somehow she got to keep me. I don't know. She cleaned up her act when they were around, but I didn't. I saw the bad stuff. I got to see her like shoot up heroin every day, and like.
How old were you the first time you saw that?
I have no idea. But
It's just something you remember?
It's just what I remember about her. It's like, how some people remember their moms baking them,
Perfume or
or I was going to say bake a pie or something.
Yeah.
Whereas I remember my mom cook heroin on a spoon. That's like what I remember about her. Like one of the things that, and she was very religious, so we'd always go to church. And she tried to quit so many times. She'd go to different programs.
It's really hard.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a horrible, horrible drug.
Yeah, and so I remember all these like these odd little, but to me it's not odd. It was just what it was.
Well, when you're a child and you're forming your memories, nothing seems. It's just like, oh, this is how the world is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have no other basis for reality. You don't have anything to compare it against. You don't go to your friend's house and be like, no one's doing heroin here?
Yeah. Well,
it's like those pieces don't start to come together till later. Like, how when your mom's doing heroin and they're like, what? No.
You know how when your mom nods off in the middle of a sentence? When that happens?
You know how like moms be nodding off in sentences.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that happen to everybody?
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't know. And we did move around like a lot. So we were never in the same spot for any length of maybe like later on in life. But I remember, so we'd have those moments, and she'd get arrested for stealing or something or whatever, and then I'd go live with either a family member or at one point she got arrested for prostitution because this is this is after we had been leaving places in the middle of the night too much, and
Mhm.
eventually you can't get another apartment.
Yeah.
So we ended up becoming homeless and living in a car for about, I think it was a year. I don't know, but it was a while. It felt like a while. I was a kid, so I don't know. Time is like, who knows?
Yeah. Did you go to school when you were homeless?
I don't think I did,
Okay.
which is why was a little behind. But I was never too far behind because I always read.
Mhm.
So I was really good at reading. It was one thing my mother like instilled in me was like reading all the time. She'd either read to me or get me to read. So she just big about education. But anyway, so we became homeless for a little while, and then eventually, I don't know it's maybe my stepdad's idea, not the brother and sister stepdad, but the whole time she was married to a man named Steven.
Okay.
Not a guy I like, but that's just because of what I found out later. But at the time, he was just my stepdad.
He seemed fine. He didn't hurt you or anything.
No, he didn't do
It's
anything
cool.
bad, no. But anyway, he was also a heroin addict, so they did it together.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're perfect for each other in that regard. They're all
But it's so much harder to get out of then.
Oh, I
If
know.
you like, as soon as you feel good and you're like, I can quit today, then your partner is doing it and it's still in the house. Like, how can you quit? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of crazy moments with him where I remember like you were talking about coming down.
Mm-hmm.
He accused her of stealing his drugs or something and,
Yeah.
and beat her so hard. I remember riding with her in the ambulance to the hospital.
It really scares me.
Yeah,
I've had some recent experiences with people on that drug, and it was like,
the come down is scary.
yeah, they really scared me. And the come up is like, oh, you're the sweetest person I've ever met. You're such a tender, beautiful soul. And then the
Mhm.
come down is like, who are you?
Yeah.
It's so scary.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he only did that once, I guess, if that's a positive. I don't think it is.
it's not great,
Yeah, he only
but
he only beat her really badly once.
it's still, I mean, like, to grow up with that as like having that as like a baseline for, oh, sometimes people do this. Like, did that make you really anxious around new people? As like, when are
Yes.
they gonna change, or when is this gonna happen?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. I think maybe that's why I'm kind of a hermit in life, as I actually have more enjoyment being by myself than I do around
Because you
others.
just never know what they're gonna do.
I suppose. I guess I don't think about it anymore, but well, maybe that's why I picked stand up too, is because it's kind of a solitary
Solitary
thing.
pursuit.
It's a
Yeah.
solitary pursuit, and even the career that I do professionally, editing, it's still solitary.
Mhm.
Like everything I do is like very like.
I'm that way too. Like, I
Mhm.
chose to be an artist, and like being an artist is pretty much like, you might as well go on a mountaintop and just be by yourself. It's you're alone most of the time. And
Well,
then
yeah.
stand up is now like a way for me to be alone with people, is what
Mhm.
I call it. Is like, you're alone up there on the stage. People are around you, but you're still alone, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
But so I kind of want to circle back, because
Okay.
now that we have some understanding of your history, so you got this DNA test, and we were talking outside of Mike. I think initially you thought you were Native American, and now
Initially I did, and now
you,
I think I'm more Mexican
Native
or Native
Mexican.
Mexican, yeah. So
Um,
probably like
Still indigenous. So you still have an indigenous American heritage, but it's Mexican instead of Native American.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's natives there too, but they're
Right. Well,
just
no, they're related. So that's probably why it came up as the same,
yeah,
right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And their tests aren't perfect yet, so they're not like they can kind of generally go, you're somewhere in this area, but
Hmm.
they're not like you're this, they're not definitive just yet. So, but I'm excited to potentially meet these new people. They're not just new people; they're like
New to
family.
you.
Yeah, new
Yeah.
to me, but and it's an odd thing to meet people. Like I'm 34 now, and these are a whole group of people I've never even met and didn't even know existed until 2 days ago.
It's so interesting to me, because like, we were talking and you were saying that knowing that you have this heritage, it made you rethink being alone or maybe having more serious relationships. Do you still
Oh
feel that
yeah,
way?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. Because now, well, it's odd. Now I have a whole new group of people to be disappointed in me. No, I'm kidding. But now I feel like before I was just me, like it was just Chris, and that was like kind of cool. But now it's like now I have this whole other side of me that maybe I have a not a responsibility, but kind of a responsibility to keep whatever it is going. Like having a family and having kids eventually, things like that.
You feel genetically responsible for that.
Yes. Also, but that could be getting older,
Yeah.
but I kind of feel more responsible for keeping whatever my bloodline is going. I don't know. I don't know where it came from, but even more so after the test.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was reading this book. It's called 1491.
Hmm.
And it's called New Revelations of the Americas Before Columbus.
Hmm.
And it's super interesting. It's all about basically the population of America right before Columbus got here.
Hmm.
And it's super interesting because they're not really sure how many Native people lived in the Americas before Columbus got here. The guesses vary from as much as 112 million to 8 million people. So pretty
Wow.
big range. They're not really sure, but pretty much within a few years of him being here, it dropped to 6 million people. So either way, it dropped significantly
Yeah.
due to smallpox and due to all these other diseases. And 1491 kind of goes through like genetically how that happened and like
Hmm.
how Native people were more susceptible to certain diseases and less susceptible to the environment that they were in. Like Native
Hmm.
people are less susceptible to diseases caused by flukes and flatworms and all these sort of like parasites that were native to the Americas.
Oh, okay.
So what happens genetically in our blood is that we all have we have white blood cells that attack certain things and they
Hmm.
have different markers. And so like Native people were more adapted to this environment that they had lived in for thousands of years, whereas like people from the Americas who grew up with livestock were more adapted to fight
Correct.
diseases from the livestock.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much just like a basic genetic thing. And like it caused a lot of problems clearly because it created kind of a genocide and
Well,
bit of a genocide.
yeah.
And then
History is a dirty business.
it really is. And then like over time, like all of these policies that white people enacted, like further messed that up, not allowing Native people to speak their own language, kind of the systemic destruction of that culture. And then
Mhm.
also that kind of genetic bloodline. So I think it's interesting that you feel so connected knowing that this is a part of who you are now, like feeling more responsible for those genes. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I have no idea why. It just is a feeling,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can't articulate feelings very well because, they're feelings.
Well, they're big.
They're big.
Yeah, there's like your feelings aren't just one feeling. There's like 20 feelings living inside them and like a whole history.
Yeah. And but back to the history thing. I mean, history is just every there's always something going on with it. I mean, history is just such a horrible like no matter where you go, this is always the best time in history.
Humans be killing each other.
Yeah.
Humans be genociding.
Yeah. Is that is that Yeah, humans be genocided.
That's that's a great t-shirt. Like merch table is just humans be genociding.
It's unfortunately it's true throughout history through most cultures.
Oh yeah, we just are
So-
like, oh, you're different, you should die. And it's like, hey, are we mostly the same still? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, and I love history. That was one of my favorite subjects in school. I would read it. I would nerd out over it. So they would give me the history books, and most people would just read whatever they had to read and then ignore everything else. I would read the entire book because I liked it, even though like it's all like every culture is like killing some other culture. Like throughout history, there's no culture that didn't kill somebody or hurt somebody.
That's really interesting that you're so tied to history and then like your own history is such a mystery.
Hey, I saw what you did there. Your own history is like a mystery. Yeah.
Where are you at, Scooby-Doo?
I know. Where is well, smoking weed with Shaggy? But yeah, my own history is a bit of a mystery, and I don't know what to do about. I mean, I'm gonna hopefully find
You're
out
just trying to
soon.
figure it out. Well, I think it's so interesting too because like growing up, I didn't like my dad was part of my life when I was really young.
Mhm.
And then he was gone for a while and I wasn't really close to him. And
Okay.
I would still sometimes see aunts and uncles from that side or family from that side, but it was sparse. But then like once my dad started coming into my life again and I got to spend time with him and I got to spend time with that side of my family, I realized like, oh, there's all these parts of me that are just like these people.
Yes.
That are, you know, like, because my mom's family, I have parts of myself are like that, but I would say my personality and my temperament is more closely related to my dad's family, even though those aren't the people that I mostly grew up with.
Okay.
So it's weird because it's like to go to like a family function and see all these people that it's like, oh, you're my people. Like these are my people. And I can't imagine not being able to see that piece of myself in other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like growing up and not having like, oh, all these people are just like me. They do this thing that I do. They believe this thing that I believe. Like my cousins on my dad's side, they're so much like me. It weirds me out, you know? And I can't imagine having to not know that, you know?
Well, yeah, there is a in science. I forget where I've heard that. I've heard this from several different podcasts, like mostly Radio Lab I've listened to. But there's a genetic memory of that transfers into genes, and I wonder if that's also behavioral.
There's certain things that have to be because
Yeah.
like temperament or like positivity, it's just like how your brain is firing, but it's also like how we're wired. My mom says that my dad's family are either workaholics or alcoholics.
Okay.
But everyone in that family has this like they're like the animals. They're like a horse that will race itself to death. Like that's how my family is. And I'm like that too. And I
Yeah.
find myself being that way is literally like I'll go until someone says you have to stop or you will die.
Well,
you know?
Well, I hope this podcast ends at the appropriate hour. No.
Yeah. Well, you know
No,
what
I'm
I mean
kidding.
though? It's just like I just like to push myself really hard and like
Yeah.
achievement is a part of it. And it's a chemical wiring. Like the chemical line for achievement and also the chemical line for like substance abuse.
It's very close.
They're super close
Yeah.
because what it is your brain learns really quickly and like consumes positive feedback. So if that positive feedback is like, I won this game, this level, I got this achievement, I did this thing, you get the same chemical release as like taking cocaine and your body becomes addicted much faster because it's like, oh, I'll just do this all the time and I'll get that feeling. So like the same neural pathways work. So knowing that that's a part of my wiring and a part of who I am has helped me a lot because it helps me like not hang out and do cocaine.
Yeah. Also, cocaine's expensive.
It's very expensive and it's not good for you.
No, it's like a better cup of coffee, but
Coffee already like wires me so hard. Like I'll just get like shaky and like it's not good.
Well, I mean, I'm on coffee right now, and
You're doing the drugs in this podcast, Chris?
I know. I just sniffed it. I mean, I snorted it. I went to a local establishment and got one of their coffees.
A local establishment.
I'm supporting local business.
He cares.
I care. Well, I care enough that they don't have a Starbucks around here, so I had to go to a local. But whatever.
So this is a love podcast. Have you been in love before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you? How long ago was the last time you were in love?
Whew, it's been a long time. I want to say 2000. When did I leave that place? 2000. Has it been since 2010? Has it been that long? My God, it's been a while.
I didn't mean to make you sad.
No, it was a bad relationship, but I still think about it once in a while. But it was a bad time. But it was a girl that I'd worked with at the casino when I was working there.
Okay.
And I don't know what I did, but we were just chatting like this, and eventually we started hanging out outside of work, and then I invited her to a show, and I did pretty well, and she was like, "Oh, I just find you so attractive." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, I thought she was very beautiful too, obviously, but, I was like, "Wow, this is awesome. She's, like, really beautiful." And, then she kinda, uh, grabbed my dick, pretty
Okay,
quick. She was
okay.
very fast.
Nabbed it up.
Yeah, and I realized, I don't want a girl that goes fast because that always ends badly in my experiences. It's just never good, you know what I mean? It's always, well, if they'll do that with you, they'll probably do that with anyone, and she did.
Aw.
But, I did really love her though, and, I think it was the moment I knew I loved her was when, we were in the car. I was driving her, home, and she told me, that she wanted to marry me and have kids. I was like, "Oh, wow, that'd be cool." And then
How long into your relationship was that?
oh, no, this is super fast. This is, like, first week.
Straight up, the dude that I was engaged to, we were friends for like a long time before
Mhm,
we started like sleeping together and dating.
mhm.
And he said that to me like very early in our relationship too. And it freaked me out. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You
Well,
can't just say that to someone.
maybe I have a different threshold because it made me go, "Oh, yeah, that'd be cool. I like that." But
Yeah.
then when I finally, later on told her I loved her too, she, something changed right away. So she was just manipulative, and I know that now, but at the time, when you're in it, you don't see it.
It's
Mm,
so hard to see people because like to some extent we all have flaws and we're
mhm.
all kind of messed up.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a problem when I get with people, when I hang out with them, it's like, oh, like you messed up, but I also mess up and it's fine. So like I don't want to think that this person is less self-aware than me or less, like they might be manipulating me or they might be
Mhm.
selfish. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, we just mess up and that's okay. And then sometimes you let too many things go and then you realize like, oh, this person
Yes.
has a pattern of
Yes.
hurting me and this person has a pattern of like not really treating me fairly.
And that's something I had to learn.
It
Uh,
takes time. It takes a couple bad relationships to figure out, unfortunately.
yeah, I mean, I've also been on the other end of it where I was manipulating, so I'm not perfect. So that's maybe why I was like, probably in my head, I was like, I probably deserve this in a way,
Oh, interesting.
because I did that to another girl right before.
What do you mean manipulating?
Well, not
Like,
manipulate, but this other girl right before, I was with that one, was, some well, she was a comic, but, uh, I I kinda met her in open mic scene, but, I don't know, she came on to me as well,
okay,
and we just started hooking up really fast,
okay.
and I didn't really care for her. I knew it, like, I'm like, "Oh,
Oh,
she's cool, but she's a little off," and
yeah,
so I'm like, I couldn't see myself being with her for any length of time, but I was gonna have fun. I mean, let's have fun, you know?
yeah.
And so we ended up hooking up a lot, and then she told me she loved me as well.
Oh, that's really hard.
Yeah, and I felt really bad actually at the time.
I feel like we need to talk more with the people that we have sex with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I feel like this is just a thing that happens all the time. It's just like people have different expectations about what sex means.
Yeah, well, I don't mind, casual, but it never stays casual.
Well, I think this thing happens all the time too, where one person isn't really okay with casual.
Mhm.
And we're both like, no, I'm cool with casual because they like want to be cool and chill.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's fine. But they're lying to themselves and
Mhm.
also to you. And then the person that is super cool with it being casual is like, well, I mean, I told them it was just casual
Yeah.
and it is, you
But
know what I mean? And then like, it's really just like people not being vocal and confident in saying, this is what I want from this relationship. And I'm willing to walk away if that's not what you are also interested in.
yeah, absolutely, and I think, learning to be able to walk away is the hardest thing I had to learn to do, but it's the best thing because now I'll go on dates, and if I don't feel it, like, not the first I'll give them a couple.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not, like, closed off completely, but, if I sense something that I've sensed before, where like, oh, you're trying to manipulate me, you're trying to do this, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do that anymore.
I went on a date the other night, and the dude was talking to me, but he was looking at a basketball game the whole time.
Well, it is the finals though.
I don't care.
In his defense, though, sports.
Fuck sports.
I mean, well, no, guys need something separate from women to do.
Yeah, but not during our date.
That's true. Was it a first date? Or?
It was a second date, which to me is like, we're not dating yet. Like, this is still very much a trial period. Yeah. So it's like,
that's true. You get trial periods. It's like, try my 3-day free trial.
Yeah.
Well, it's not free. It's going to cost you something, but it's a 3-day trial. You know, you go out and see if you vibe, see if you connect, see if you have any chemistry together.
That AOL disc you used to get in the mail.
Yeah. But I like dating. It's fun where you just go out and hang out with somebody.
Yeah, I don't mind. Like, it's a good time. I just like, I find that I have more fun hanging out with my friends.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I just like, I'm getting just really exhausted of like spending time with people that are kind of boring. Yeah, when I could be hanging out with my friends.
Most people are pretty boring, actually. That's what I've noticed, especially as a comic.
Yeah.
Dating as a comic I hate, this sounds like a hack premise, but it's not. Dating as a comic is hard only because everyone is so boring.
Yeah.
Most people aren't as entertaining as they think they are.
Oh, I was talking to this dude and I was like, yeah, do you stand up? And he's like, I'm funny. Like, my friends say I'm funny. And I was like, okay. He's like, I haven't like written anything or like I haven't tried or whatever. And he's like, but I'm like witty. That counts for something. I was like, yeah, you're the funniest real estate investor at a tapas party. Like, sure. Yeah. There you go, buddy.
Yeah, you got that going.
But that's not the same, you know, like. And then I was like, the same, you know, you're talking to someone and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go do these podcasts and I got these things to do and I'm going to do this. I'm like, what are you going to do today? He's like, I don't know, probably just chill. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go.
That's the one difficult thing. And that's probably why I dated that one comic once was it's hard to, well, I guess we were just hooking up, but still.
I've always had to date like artists or creative people of some type because it's difficult to date people where you're the only interesting thing that they do.
Yeah. Well, that's,
you know what I mean?
Funny, yeah. But they just don't get it because it's like, even in my job now, it's not traditional 9 to 5. It is 9 to 5, but if I need to stay over, like sometimes I'll work 12 hours, sometimes I'll work like super long. Sometimes I'll be there from 9 a.m. till 1 a.m. like just working on different stuff because I have a deadline or whatever. And that's not what most people are used to.
Right.
Most people just get to go home, watch their TV, they go to bed, do the whole thing over again. And that's their lives. And they'll go out on the weekends maybe.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily always have weekends. Sometimes I'm on the road. Sometimes I'm I got like a bunch of people hitting me up for projects or maybe
Do you think this is something that I wonder about myself sometimes is do you think that having kind of a chaotic childhood and growing up in a way where you're like, oh, I never know what the rules are today makes you crave a chaotic life as an adult? Like, do you feel more comfortable with a little bit of chaos?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, oh, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And that kind of makes you feel better than like, oh, I just do this forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I remember doing those jobs. I had jobs, like normal jobs before where I do now. And I was bored out of my mind. And not to say that I don't get bored sometimes, even my job, but there's times when it may seem boring for a minute and then something changes and I have to deal with a problem like right away. I like solving things. So
me too. It wakes your brain up. It challenges you. You get that success feeling of like, oh, I fixed the thing.
That's what I like about stand up too, in that it's always like trying to figure out how do I say something to get people to laugh at this weird idea that I have.
That's my favorite. I like the part where you're figuring it out the best.
Yeah, it's almost better than doing well.
Yeah, well, like, oh, I can do well with these jokes that I know, and like that's fine. But like the part when you get it the first time, you get always so high.
Actually, it's a little bit like a drug.
It is a drug.
The first time is the best, and it never quite lives up to that any time afterwards.
But it's always because the first time is a gamble, and you're like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and that's what makes it fun. Is like, oh, this might work.
Yeah, well, and I enjoyed. That's why I like Mike's. Where you ever do the Copper Still on Wednesdays?
Yes, I was supposed to do it this Wednesday, and then I didn't sleep the night before, and I had to cancel.
Oh,
I
okay.
felt so bad. I love Maggie Mayfield.
Maggie's the best. She's like one of my favorite people in comedy.
She's a beautiful human being. Maggie Mayfield, if you are in Los Angeles, her mic is 8 p.m. at the Copper Still. It's called Challenge Mic.
Yes.
And you pick subjects out of a hat, and it's essentially stand up on the fly. So you don't have a prepared set. It's a really fun mic, and it's really good for building new material. If you're a comic and you want to do that, go check it out.
Yes, great plug. I think she would appreciate it working in radio. But I love that mic because I never know what I'm going to say exactly, and I never know where I'm going to quite go. So for me, the way I learned to write stand up was I started in Long Beach, like as I told you, and one of my mentors, one of the people that I came up with and also inspired me. He was a writer naturally, like he today now he writes for. Well, he used to write for Chris Rock, and he still goes on tour with them every once in a while.
Okay.
But now he has a show on Fox, or it's about to be on Fox. Kevin Hart's producing. I don't know. But anyway, he was a great writer. Like he was always a great comedy writer. He just knew comedy inside and out, and he could write. He would sit there for 8 hours a day. That's why he's successful now. Just writing scripts or writing, this or writing that, writing either jokes or scripts or anything he needed to do. He just had that mind. So watching him perform, he would never fully write out a joke because he was such a natural writer that he would just go, well, here's my ideas. I'm going to figure it out on stage. So I emulated that. I tried to do that. And Challenge Mike reminds me of that process where you don't know exactly what you're going to say, but you're just going to see what you can come up with.
I found that I do better at mics when I have like, this is the premise and I got to talk it out than sitting and writing.
Me too.
Because the feel and your energy is so much a part of it because it is a performance art. Like you can't write that down. You can't write like change your inflection here. You just got to kind of figure it out. So it's fun.
Yeah. And I think after a while you'll get to know how you talk. So eventually eventually you'll know, even if you were to write it, you would know like, oh, change it here. Yeah. But that's a huge thing. I don't know how inside baseball I want to get, but I don't think people understand in comedy. It's not just saying words. It's actually performing those words. Like, where do I pause?
Yeah.
Where do I look?
It makes such a big difference. Roast battle is really good for honing that craft too. It's just like,
I've never tried it.
It's terrifying, but I fucked up one of my jokes last week and lost, but it was okay. It was still really fun. I want to circle back to love a little bit because we're almost out of time here.
Okay.
So something that I want to ask you now is like, do you see, like, when you look at your life for the future, do you see being in a relationship with someone and having kids now? Like, is that a part of your vision for the future? Or is that something that you're still kind of scared of or not really ready for? How do you feel about that?
I don't think you're ever really ready.
That sounds terrifying. I'm so scared.
Well, no, I don't know. I think it would be a lot of fun though, in a different way.
Yeah.
So everyone I work with now, well, now that I'm 34, most of the people I work with either have families or maybe not kids, but at least are married. Like my best friend's married, just got married. My other best friend's getting married in October. I'm like starting to go to weddings more.
That's great.
And it seemed scary, but then when you see like how happy they are, like, and they don't hide the bad stuff from me either. They go, we fight and this and that, but for the most part, like they know each other so well that even when they fight, they know, oh well, it was really about this and not I wasn't really mad at this, I was actually mad at this, and they talk it out. And I'm seeing like, oh, you can have a relationship and you can not get along, but not all the time, obviously, because no one does. I mean, that's a lie. The whole princess myth is a lie. No one is happy ever after.
No, yeah,
that is BS. So what it taught me was you can have a relationship, it can go a long time, and you can actually grow to like each other for different reasons.
Interesting.
And as you grow and change, they grow and change, and you learn new things to like each other. But it's always, you have to work at it. It's not just going to happen. There is no magic person that makes it work. You have to always try to make it work together. and you're gonna have challenges, but it's not as scary now that I'm like, oh, it's another challenge.
Oh, one more thing that I can achieve, one
Yeah.
more goal I can unlock, one more problem I can solve. That's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask, so this is the kind of the ending question that we like to end with, and it's when you feel yourself starting to fall in love, is there something that you get afraid of or something that kind of scares you about it? And then if you have that instinct, is there a way that you're kind of trying to overcome or correct that?
Yes. Well, yeah, for me specifically, I have a feeling that someone's going to leave all the time.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's like that. My first instinct is, oh, they're just gonna find a reason to
You
go.
mean because people just left all the time in
all
your
the time
life?
in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Totally.
yeah, that was my natural state.
Yeah.
So that is like the number one thing I have to work on. And
It's just like, oh, just because these people left for their own reasons doesn't mean that I'm inherently not worth loving.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I've been to therapy and it helps. But I don't know. There's a way to battle that, and it's like cognitive therapy where you write it down and then you like deal with it on a piece of paper. Like
Everything looks stupid when you write it down.
Yes.
Every fear that you have, this is something that I found is like when I'm angry at someone or I'm afraid of something, if I write out what I'm actually feeling and then I read it, I'm like, I'm dumb. This is a dumb fear. This is a dumb thing. Yeah. That's helpful.
Well, and I learned that from. I only went to therapy for a little bit, but it was the most helpful thing I learned to just write everything down that you're afraid of, or you're, like you said, angry about, or fearful about, and it helps you to visualize it so that you can conquer it in a way.
And you can also, something I found about writing is when you write, you have to tell the truth.
Yes.
So when you write something out and then you read it back and you're like, oh, maybe I'm not really being fair to this person. Maybe I'm coloring this narrative in a way to make myself the victim or in a way that isn't fair to the person that I'm upset with, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's really helpful. This is a really good podcast, Chris. I'm so glad you came by. This is really interesting.
Yeah, I had a great time hanging out in K-Town.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably get some boba after. But do you want to tell people where they can find you or your stand-up?
Yes. Well, you can go to chrisadamscomedy.net. I need to get the comedy.com back, but or Facebook at comedian Chris Adams and Twitter at comic Chris Adams. I'm trying to think of what else. I'm on Instagram, I think, at comic Chris Adams as well. And website, I should be updating more, but I'm going to be at Brea on the 12th of June. I don't know when this is coming out.
This will come out in like 4 weeks, probably.
Oh, so it probably will be too late. But okay.
Yeah.
So I will have been at the Brea on the 12th. And then next month, I'm going to San Diego on I forget what date. I have to look it up.
But it'll be on all your social media.
Correct.
And people can listen to your funny jokes about your darkest things.
Well, I also talk about love and things. You know?
Yeah. No, it's fun.
I try to make it happy.
Yeah, it's good. I really enjoy your comedy, and I'm glad that I got to watch you again the other night. It's been a while. So
oh, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey guys, if you like this podcast, you should definitely subscribe to it and rate it on iTunes. As soon as we get to 50 reviews, I will choose someone that's reviewed the podcast, and you'll get an illustration. It'll be someone chosen at random as soon as we get to 50 reviews. So tell your friends about it and say something cool, hopefully. Or you can tell me it sucks, but that's not cool. And if you want more updates about this podcast, follow me at Andrea Loves Everybody on Facebook and Instagram, at Andrea Loves Pod on Twitter, or just follow me at Sundress Comic for show updates or other fun comedy things I do. Thank you so much for listening. Love you. Bye.